Joining me now is Mike Bareja, Deputy Director of Cyber Technology Security at the Australian Strategic Policy Institute. Thanks for your time. It feels like a bit of a left field concern. Solar panels. Does this surprise you? How real do you think this risk is?
Yeah, good afternoon, Tom, and thanks for that. It's a real risk. It's something that's actually a really interesting example of a bigger issue, which is around Internet of Things devices. So these solar panels and these inverters are really just one kind of internet-connected devices which are now prevalent throughout the world. And so in 2019, we had about 8 billion of these devices. And next year in 2024, we're going to have around double that in 17 billion devices. And in 2030, around 30 billion. And so part of the issue with this solar panel vulnerability or potential vulnerability is something that's common to all of these devices, which is a lot of these things that were never internet connected before, like fridges, toasters, cars, baby monitors. These are all now becoming internet connected, and they're being developed by companies that had previously never written a line of code. So you're getting trillions of lines of code being written for these devices, which aren't probably the best. So, you know, they're probably full of vulnerabilities. The other part of that is around the ownership component. So yeah, the ownership component of these devices and where that data is going. So that's another issue where foreign ownership of these companies and the control of the data that they collect, that's where we're seeing these really pointed issues come to the fore around things like critical infrastructure.
So it just strikes me sometimes if we talk about prevention versus cure, are we going overboard with internet-connected devices, or am I a Luddite? Because when I look at Bluetooth in my house now, the fridge wants me to connect, our vacuum cleaner is always there, asks me to connect. Apparently it'll tell me when it needs cleaning, but I just, I understand it might be, there's great things you can do when you're away from your home, put the blinds up and down to pretend that you're home or start a watering system. But some of these things, I just don't get why we need it. Is that an issue, prevention versus cure, or is it just better to make all the code, good and accept everything's online now?
Mate, I'm on Team Luddite as well. Look, I think there is a saturation of these types of devices. There is a motivation that's very clear among the big data companies and the producers of this, which is partly around collecting data to use for analytics, to be able to sell other things to people and understand how their products are being used. There are, of course, important ways that it can make our lives better. These things can make learn from how we use them and make their use more efficient. And when it comes to this particular example of the solar panels and the inverters, that's really the key reason that these inverters are being internet connected, is because we're seeing the ability, which is a good ability, to be able to manage the energy usage in an efficient way across the grid.
Yeah, that makes sense. I get that. Look, if someone out there, if there's a viewer that wants to tell me why I should be getting the fridge or the vacuum cleaner online, I'm open to ideas. I'm open to new technology. I'm just not going to do it for the sake of it. The Microsoft deal is an interesting one. So $5 billion are going to tip into Australia. It's another one of these, I guess, public-private partnerships. In some areas, there's always this call for sort of government to get out of the way. In this area, I guess you've got this combination of cybersecurity, which is sort of, it feels like a government responsibility, but it's also beholden on private companies to sort of make sure it's happening.
That's right. And it's a team sport. Cybersecurity is absolutely a public-private partnership. It's a whole-of-nation effort, and we can't pretend otherwise. We need to be really clear around government's role and what it does well, and what industry and the individual needs to do and take responsibility. So we're seeing a lot of different policies being developed from the government at the moment, including through the upcoming cybersecurity strategy around how we address this. So in this particular announcement, in the way that we're partnering with Microsoft around these data centers and around this, cyber shield, it's a extension of what's been happening for a long time, in that we have a really fantastic pointy end, if you will, capability in Australian Signals Directorate around offensive cyber capability, around protecting our critical infrastructure, around those potential state-on-state conflict type scenarios. But it only can do so much, and government can and should only do so much. the vast amount of information, the vast amount of data that comes from the billions of sensors and feeds from around the world to companies like Microsoft, to Google, to AWS, these data sets and the evidence they provide are far orders of magnitude greater than what government can and should do. So there should be that partnership to be able to use that to conduct analytics and find those cybersecurity threats.
So just finally, briefly, when we're talking about the sharing element of this, because the Minister at Husic was saying, companies are going to be on board and it's a collaborative thing with companies and government. In a situation such as Medibank Private, do you think it's realistic that company will go, here's how we've been hacked, let's tell the government and make sure other private health companies don't get done? Or will they just wait a little bit, and I'm not making accusations here, but any given company, wait a bit and maybe hope their competitors cop the same thing and they're not singled out as terrible on cybersecurity?
So that's a really common, I suppose, problem or challenge. There definitely is that motivation to withhold reporting on these things. However, if we can conduct the cybersecurity measures of the government and the policies that we have to cooperate with industry in a way that creates trust and allows companies to report without having detriment, all the better. However, there will always be this reticence to report when there is a clear detriment on the horizon for the company. What we are looking at with this, larger data center type policy is something a little bit different to that simple reporting. What we're looking at there is having a huge amount of data that is able to be analyzed and have perhaps even things that organizations never see themselves in their own networks become apparent when this data is put together and have AI running analysis over the top of it.
All right, yeah, an interesting element of it. I guess we can hope for the Team Australia element because ultimately it affects us, the consumer. Mike Bareja, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Tom.